Hello, and thank you for joining us for this year's Family Forum series, where the Sioux Falls School District and experts from our valued partners at Avera Behavioral Health offer practical advice to strengthen families. We were excited that the Family Forum sessions offered last year were viewed thousands of times by parents, and we are pleased to continue this partnership with Avera again this year. We are so glad you are investing time to help your child navigate the daily successes and challenges of growing up. As a father of two who are now young adults, I know it's not easy. Schools and parents need each other to influence positive behaviors so students are able to learn and grow at our schools. Whether it's advice on balancing activities, coping with anxiety, or how to safely use social media, on the third Tuesday of every month, we bring you relevant topics and advice all parents can use. We hope you find this information offered by our presenter valuable and are able to apply it in your own home. These sessions will last about 30 minutes. So let's get started with tonight's topic.
All right, hello, I'm Wallace Jackman, a psychologist, clinical psychologist here at Avera. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker, been here at Avera for about 23 years, the director of psychology at Avera Behavioral Health. I do some inpatient and outpatient consultations, as well as some administrative work here. Doing this second presentation for the Family Forum series in conjunction with the Sioux Falls School District. For this one, this presentation is on social comparisons and shaming with some tips on healthy social media use. We're talking about research regarding social media and phone use for children and adolescents. We're speaking on the topic of social comparisons, and it's important for us to understand that social comparisons isn't a new concept. This is something that's been ongoing for centuries. We've all made comparisons socially regarding our next door neighbor, or the vehicle they're driving, or their wooden carriage, or whatever it might be. We've always made social comparisons with other folks. But for children and adolescents and the advent of cell phones, it becomes more profound because of the number of venues, places, people in which they can make comparisons to. And so a majority of this content of this presentation, we will keep in mind the concept of social comparisons, but we also, the more importantly, we have to realize these social comparisons are occurring within the context of social media, computer use, cell phone use. That's where the majority of those social comparisons are occurring. And so it's important for us to know more about that venue and how the social comparisons becomes more intertwined within the context of teenagers and children's view of themselves with their peers and their cohort. And so 90% of young adults use social media, and they use them at least once a day. That was in 2017. That's actually shown to have been increased since that period of time. And we know young people spend 54% of their time online using social media. Compared to their non-depressed peers, depressed adolescents use the internet more frequently. Why is that important? What that's telling you is that if I have a young person in my home that is depressed or has symptoms of depression, they're likely to use the phone much more than their cohort. And if that's the case, those social comparisons are occurring more often than people in their cohort. Rosen and others spoke about the anxiety that's encountered with folks wanting to check their text messages. And so many of the checking with regards to the text messages is based upon the child and adolescent's desire to see what feedback, to see what likes, to see what input that they've received from their peers. And if they have a history of depression or dysthymia, where dysthymia is just a low-grade, long-term depression, that's likely to increase their anxiety due to that extra checking that's occurring on their social media sites or their cell phone or tablet. Some media sites may facilitate avoidant coping strategies and social isolation, which promote psychopathology. What all that means is that The young people that are checking these social media sites, checking TikTok, checking to see what other people had to say about their post or whatnot, that could promote more psychopathology because they're avoiding other things that they could be doing with their time. Um, and or it's causing them to isolate and not be active around other peers. It's also shown that that overuse or addiction, they might be using it to avoid some negative emotions, such as anxiety and depression. And say, well, what does that have to do with social comparison? Well, if using the internet, using my phone more, and looking at social media sites more causes me anxiety, depression, imagine how that's going to be compounded if they're comparing themselves to other people. The Smiths went on vacation to Tahiti, and look at me, I can't even go, to Del Rapids. Of course that's going to cause even more anxiety and depression. Well, we talked about this, or I talked about this in the other presentation about FOMO, means fear of missing out. Um, that's one of the factors that lead to people. This isn't just child and adolescents, this is adults too. That because they feel like I'm missing out on something. So that's why it's important for me to check, to look, to see what's online. And so it says here that enhancing their self-esteem and promoting social skills could be an important measure in preventative efforts. So already we're talking a little bit about prevention. How can we decrease this tendency to FOMO and check on stuff all the time? Enhance their self-esteem, boost their self-esteem, and promote social skills that don't include the use of technology or cell phone use. We know that FOMO negatively impacts adolescent health. So that fear of missing out. So some of you out there have likely tried to tell your young person, you don't need to be on your phone that much. You're spending 5 hours a day on your phone. You don't really need to do that and check. And they feel like they have to check up. They have to see what's new on TikTok. They have to see what somebody said about them on Instagram. Um, the more that happens, it will impact their health, and not just their mental health. We're talking physical health as well. Most notably, disrupting their sleep and wake cycle. We know some psychiatric disorders associated with addictive social networking and video gaming. I had one young man that I saw several months ago that spends 30 hours a week playing a specific role-playing strategy game online. 30 hours a week. I mean, imagine if he's getting paid $20 an hour. That'd be a pretty good gig he'd have for financial gain. But yeah, 30 hours a week. And when we talk about social comparison, he said he played less than some of the people that he played with in this strategy game. That some of them were playing 40, 50 hours a week of this game because they would do these battles or whatnot against these other people online. And so there was a social comparison right there that he didn't feel like he measured up or was helping his team as much because he was only doing 30 hours a week. One study found a positive correlation between hours spent on social networking sites per day and depression scores. Um, all this is saying, all this is saying is that the more hours the young person, this is adults too, the more time they spend on social networking sites, the more depression there's going to be. There's a direct connection or correlation. The more hours, the more depression. I always include this slide. Researchers indicate that individuals who use 7-Eleven platforms had more than 3 times the odds of reporting high levels of anxiety symptoms. Couple reasons why this is important. One is just what it says. If you're using 7 or more platforms, and if you're on Facebook, there's usually at least 3 or 4 platforms associated with Facebook. You have Marketplace, you have your wall, you have other people's connections or Farmville or whatever it might be. So 7-Eleven platforms increases anxiety 3 times or more. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But probably the more important one is if a person is more anxious, one of the things that people do to try to decrease their anxiety is to avoid. They tend to try to avoid things that cause them more anxiety. And if they feel like they can decrease their anxiety by looking at somebody's vacation photos or escape by playing a video game, they're going to try to do that more if they feel like that works for them. Those categorized as heavy users of computers or mobile phones, they reported greater levels of prolonged stress, depression, and sleep. So over and over and over, you are going to find research supporting the increased use of that phone, even though they may think, well, I'm just talking to my friends and I'm just seeing what they did, when they were on vacation, or looking at those family photos, or looking to see what happened on a wedding. And, they have an upcoming wedding, and they're comparing and contrasting what they like versus what the other people had. It doesn't matter what their use is. The more that they use it, the more likely there's going to be stress, depressive symptoms, sleep disturbance, and anxiety. Facebook addiction could be related to brain reward and gratification mechanisms because it's more prevalent in people with personality traits such as anxiety, depression, narcissism, low self-esteem. And so they're seeking it. They're using Facebook, not just Facebook. This is Instagram or TikTok, that because these folks might already be anxious or depressed, or the more they use it, it's probably exacerbated anxiety and depression. Because of that, they're using it even more because they think it's going to increase their mood. It's going to help them feel better. And generally speaking, over time, it does not. So it predicts declines in two things, two components: how they feel in the moment and how satisfied they are with their lives. So this really ties into that social comparison topic. Is if we know that the use of Facebook and Instagram predicts how a person is satisfied with their own life, and then they're comparing their life to what they're viewing on other people's pages or other people's posts, that's going to decline their sense of how they feel about their life. And it also impairs interpersonal skills, meaning that it makes it much more difficult for them to have good quality interpersonal interactions with others, face to face. And we've seen that clinically, that people are breaking up over a text message. They can't have simple conversations face to face with people. They're used to doing this by text or by TikTok or Snapchat or something like that. So people, this is a really good one. Individuals with anxiety may engage in excessive reassurance seeking to validate their self-worth or reduce intolerable feelings of uncertainty or worry through posting on social media sites more frequently to obtain comments and likes. Boy, if you didn't get anything up to this point, this would be the slide to really pay some attention to, is especially as it applies to teenagers and pre-adolescents. Um, Pre-adolescents and adolescents are constantly comparing themselves to their peers. And one way they do that through social media networking sites is how many likes or how many comments or how many little love hearts they received, or attaboys that they received from other people, or posts that oh, you post, that's a great picture, you look great. That's one of the reasons why they may be on the sites, is to get more validation of their self-worth. They're trying to get that feedback from others. I had one young lady that I saw outpatient, that her grandmother had passed away. And so she had posted that on her, I don't know which, it was Instagram page or something along that lines. And she, over a period of, she's really heartbroken about her grandmother passing away. And over the course of about 24 or 36 hours, she had like four comments, three or four comments or likes or whatever. But she was upset because her best friend posted when she went to the swimming pool and she was showing herself off on her bikini at the swimming pool, and she had like 57, 60 comments and likes from people. And so talk about self-worth and how I feel about myself. Here, my grandmother passed away. I get four likes. And this young lady's at the swimming pool, and what am I, like chopped meat? That's kind of the feeling that she had about that. So she was hoping to get some validation or some reassurance or some feedback, but she did not. And that led to more anxiety or distress for her. Anecdotal evidence from discussions with undergraduates points to a common perception that Facebook causes jealousy and negatively impacts romantic and sexual relationships. And so this author suggests that Facebook is responsible for creating jealousy and suspicion in romantic relationships. And this was in 2009. So this was almost 14 years ago. Since that time, we know that also occurs on other platforms such as Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram. So these are some of the questions I might ask, or you might ask your young person, or even ask yourself, if you're going to be honest with yourself. What do I hope to gain from these relationships online? What are you gaining in actuality? Well, what else could you be doing better? What could you be doing better with your time? Where do you believe your fear of missing out comes from? When you're alone, how do you feel? Do you immediately have to reach out to somebody and get on your phone? Because if it is, that may be a problem. So folks have to be honest with themselves when they answer these questions. Rarely do I hear somebody say, I went on Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat, or I went on Pinterest or Facebook, and I was on there for about an hour and a half, and I feel so much better now. My life is a whole lot better after I did that. That just simply doesn't, I don't hear that very often. It's usually self-loathing is what I hear from people, or guilt, or feelings of worthlessness. Like, why did I spend an hour and a half for that stuff, that garbage? Okay. So now we're moving into the definition of cyberbullying. I felt it was important to include this because the topic of social comparisons is a cousin to cyberbullying. So if I'm comparing myself to other people, or other people are comparing me to themselves or other people, that can creep towards cyberbullying, which is defined as a willful and repeated harm inflicted through the use of computers, cell phones, or other electronic devices. There's been some good research on, well, bullying research has been around for a good 30 or 40 years. It's just been multiplied. It's like putting gasoline on a fire when you use cyberbullying within the context of social media sites or computer or cell phone use. So cyberbullying is also defined as the use of electronic communication technologies to bully other people. And so, boy, I hate to say this, when you get old, you say things like, well, in my day, well, here we go. In my day, bullying occurred on the playground, or it occurred on the lunchroom, or it occurred in between classes and hallway. Now, a lot of it is occurring through electronic communication. And so if I was bullied by one individual at school, that was just one or two individuals that was happening to me. From a technology standpoint, it can be dozens to hundreds of people that are bullying that individual. So it's compounded, and it becomes much more difficult for individuals to navigate through that. It can include, I won't read this whole thing, but it can include hate speech, putting defamatory content about the child or the adult. This one I actually saw graphical cartoons depicting the target victim in a visually offensive manner. What they did was they put a picture of my client, their face picture, on these cartoons, and these cartoons were engaged in some really disgusting behaviors. And then they posted that online, and all of their friends and peers had the opportunity to see that. Teasing them, publishing private information, inviting, and that invites more harassment by way of group bullying and trolling. So all it takes is one post like that, and it can just be like a snowball rolling downhill online. The topic of electronic intrusion. It's a common form of digital dating abuse, which is the repeated use of social media to harass, pressure, threaten, or coerce a dating partner. Very, very common with young people now is they may have to share each other's passwords. They have to be able to get it. If you're going to date me, I have to be able to have your password, get into your phone and see who you're texting and why you're texting them and what was said. They have to be able to share each other's passcodes or whatnot, and then harassment. And once the maybe once the relationship is finished or through, it's on the rocks, so to speak. Then electronic intrusion could take another form of harassing that individual or pressuring them or causing problems for them in their subsequent or their next relationships. So that's just a term to keep in mind. It's not an uncommon issue for young people to have that as a problem. Youth who are cyberbullied are more likely than their peers to think about and attempt suicide. Um, Several reasons that's important. I mean, obviously, we care about our young people. We don't want them to be depressed or anxious or especially suicidal. But I'm also speaking to people that are minimizing the significance of cyberbullying or the things that occur on social media. So if you have a young person in your home and they say, so and so, said something about me or about my sister, about my best friend, and they made fun of them online, we can't simply blow that off and say something like, well, people say stuff, sticks and stones may break your bones. You can't say that. You have to take that somewhat seriously, because that if it's a constant occurrence, it's continuing, that bullying that could lead that young person to taking their life. There's documented proof of that occurring. There's been lawsuits of those things occurring, of people telling somebody, well, you should just kill yourself online. I can't think of the actual name of it, but they're passing laws that a person is liable for saying something like that online to somebody, and the person ends up hurting themselves. So we have to take it more seriously. We can't just simply tell them to brush it off or don't pay attention to it. Because even if that person was to stop using their phone completely, that's still online. Those messages, those cartoon images, they're still out there. They're still being sent to other people. So it doesn't simply just go away like water off a duck's back. It's still out there in cyberspace, possibly causing harm to that young person. So facets of social media use that may directly elicit stress responses, meaning what things could possibly cause stress for these folks. Receiving negative feedback or being cyberbullied, I think that stands to reason. Becoming more aware of stressful events occurring in other people's lives. This is for adults as well. It's a common thing I've told my client. In fact, I probably say it once a day at least. Stop using your phone. Stop looking at the news. You need to stop paying attention to the news cycle. Only spend 5 to 10 minutes checking the news. That's it. You don't need to do any more. Why? Because that can elicit a stress response when you become hyper aware of stressful events occurring in other people's lives or overseas or wars or famine. That causes a stress response. Or internalizing the pressure to maintain social network updates. Again, that ties a little bit into FOMO, but feeling like I have to respond. I have to keep my post updated to see what people are thinking about me. And that's much more prevalent with teenagers. Both bullies and their victims are more likely to suffer from depression than youth who are not involved in bullying. This might surprise some people. You think, well, the bully, they get a lot of power and I wouldn't say prestige, but a lot of power, or maybe they get a lot of attention by bullying other people. Nothing happens with them. Well, au contraire. Research indicates that bullies are just as likely to suffer from depression and have other problems that victims do. In fact, bullies and victims of bullying are at a higher risk of so many problems, not just depression. Bullies and victims are at higher risk of dropping out of school, pregnancy, getting in trouble with the law, juvenile delinquency. They're at higher risk of anxiety. They're at higher risk of lower grade point averages. They're at higher risk of suicide. So there's many, many other factors that are correlated to being a bully and being a victim of bullying. Bullies don't get off scot-free. They have a higher risk of some of those things too. Peer witnesses to bullying are also at risk for negative outcomes. Some of us probably know kind of what that means. If you see somebody being bullied or harassed, maybe in your workplace or your job, that's stressful for you. That causes problems for you. It's hard for us to view that, especially if we feel like there's nothing that we can do about it. Being bullied by peers has been linked with poor physical health, poor school adjustment, being unhappy, feeling unsafe, being truant, performing poorly, or dropping out of school. And some of those same things are associated with people that are doing the bullying. Now, it would be a whole nother workshop for me to talk about gender differences with regards to bullying, but I'll just simply say that females tend to bully differently than boys do. So here's some of the common symptoms. I think we got about 7 minutes to 8 minutes left here. So um, poor school performance. So this is for young children. Some of the common symptoms: poor school performance, poor grades, excessive worry or anxiety, don't want to go to sleep, don't want to go to school, don't want to take part in activities that they used to enjoy. They could be more hyperactive or fidgety, having nightmares, being disobedient or aggressive, but usually that has to be occurring from at least 6 months. Frequent temper tantrums. For adolescents, again, school performance problems, inability to cope with daily activities, problems with eating and sleeping, physical or somatic complaints like my stomach hurts, my head hurts, I don't feel good, or sexual acting out is common symptoms of adolescents that are bullied, or possibly being a bully. Depression shown by sustained, prolonged negative mood and attitude, abuse of alcohol or drugs, eating issues, threats of harm to themselves or other people, or cutting or harming themselves, and then aggression or non-aggression, violation of the rights of others. Those are some of the, now one in and of by themselves doesn't mean the person's being bullied or cyberbullied. But if you see a combination of these or an increase in some of these, it is worth investigating. Research indicates that when adolescents are asked what would be helpful for prevention, they emphasize that awareness and information is needed for them to feel safe and secure, or where information is passed on by peers and next of kin. And the peers piece is especially important because you and I know that, especially with teenagers, they're well, this is exactly what we're talking about: social comparison. They're very interested in what other people their age are doing and what those other people their age think about them. So it stands to reason they'd also be interested in hearing what their peers feel about cyberbullying or social comparison or healthy social media use. They'll likely listen to their peers possibly more than they'll listen to adults or their parents. One way to achieve online safety is through mutual learning. Could be to develop intergenerational intervention programs or peer intervention programs where parents and adolescents or peer adolescent groups learn together at first with the help of parents or next of kin. Simply just meaning that there's a couple ways to do it. You could have peer intervention programs, you could have parents and adolescents together with the kids, but any of that would be helpful for prevention. And we're finishing up here with other prevention efforts. I won't read through each one of these these points, but it's for your own reference. This would be things that could possibly occur in a school, that there should be debates and discussions on internet rights, junior students, age 4 to 8, maybe some awareness building sessions about how to switch on what they should do, what they should do, how they should use the cell phone or social networking sites in an appropriate manner. 8 to 13 could be taught how to use the internet for positivity. and talk about issues like grooming and pedophiles and good talk and bad talk on the internet. And then ages 14 to 17, be encouraged to open maybe sites and add their parents and teachers and talk about what's healthy or not healthy, and encouraged to create their own safety plans. And again, these are just ideas. They're not cemented in hard and fast research, but the research that was done by this individual suggests that there was some positive outcomes by doing things such as this. Other possible prevention efforts. Asking the kids to describe their experiences. Do they find it positive? How how much positivity? I've seen not just my own kids. I've seen other kids. They finally put their cell phone down, and most of the times they don't really have a smile on their face. They're not like a joyful and happy and energetic and ready to go to the park. They don't their affect doesn't look that great. Like, was that really enjoyable? Was that fun? That last 45 minutes you just spent on TikTok? Did you really enjoy yourself? Um, do see if their peers having problems online. Maybe they likely have some peers that they could tell you about that they had problems online, uh, being bullied or somebody said something negative about them. Um, Describe what apps that they're being used. The apps that kids used 4 years ago are a bit different than the apps that are being used now. So I've talked some about Facebook and Instagram, but kids are using other apps, including Snapchat and TikTok, much more frequently than they did 3 to 4 years ago. So that changes over time. So that's something to keep updated on. Encourage parents to talk to their children about what they're doing online. Ask the children to explain or show digital activity. This is so true. Kids often enjoy showing their skills to their parents. That they're more than willing to show you what they're doing or what this site does or what they can do, manipulate certain images and change colors of pictures and put funny bunny noses on people's faces, and they're usually willing to show you those kinds of things. Encourage parents to respond to those problems with supportive actions such as listening, being supportive, um, and explaining to parents that if the problem persists, they can notify a website or application maker about the problem, or the school, where adults can keep an eye on interaction, support a targeted child. I've actually seen some research that supporting some school systems are, I don't know how they're doing it, but they have completely banned cell phones. It's true. I don't know how they're doing it. But yes, there's some school systems around the nation. There's a nope, no more cell phones. That's it. We're done. Um, and there's been some positive outcome to that. For some reason, kids are learning better. I don't know. I don't know how they do it. That's a whole nother discussion. Parents need to check privacy settings and online profiles. Heck, it's not just school. Boy, I'm going off. I got to finish up here. Not just schools. There's businesses that are not letting people have their phones while they're working. So this isn't just a kids' school thing. This is adults too. Um, Parents need to check privacy settings. This is an important one. Alter spoke of parents avoid overreaction. Be approachable, calm, informed, and realistic. What he's referring to is that if you're going to ask your kid to show you some stuff on what they're doing online or what somebody said or how these websites work, we can't overreact to it. They might show us some things that we're like, oh my Lord, oh no, this is awful. We can't do that, because if you overreact, they're probably not going to show you anything after that. So we have to be approachable and calm when we see some of that content or some of the things they're doing. Otherwise, yeah, they'll never show us again. They'll keep it from us. In addition, rules concerning how much time is spent on the computer should be followed by teens and parents alike. So we can't be telling our kids, "Hey, you need to get off the phone. You're spending too much time on your cell phone," and you're looking at stock prices, or you're on Instagram, or you're looking at the Food Network or something online. No, it goes both ways. All right, I think we're at the end. And so I left some references here. Boy, that didn't turn out that great. A couple of those references. The first book there by Alter called Irresistible, The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked. Great book. And it's an easy read. It's a very easy read. So I would, and I'm not paid by that person or anything. But it's a great book. It's a great read. And so I left some of these references here. If you see something of interest, you can look at it on your own and obtain some additional information with regards to this topic. And I believe that's all I have. I really appreciate you all taking the time to watch this. This is a very extensive topic and research out there. So 20 to 30 minutes us just talking about it. This is the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. So if you really want to know more information, maybe look at some of those references, research more of it on your own. There's really good research out there to obtain additional information. Again, thank you for taking the time to listen and watch this, and I pray things go well from this point forward.
Good evening and welcome to the Family Forum series. And we appreciate Dr. Jackman and his information that he shared with us, and Dr. Jackman from Avera. And we greatly appreciate our partnership with Avera and all the things that they have done to help to provide these services for you, our parents. And we have a couple guests here with us today, and I will let them introduce themselves. So we will start here.
Hi, I'm Josh Siegfried. I'm the assistant principal at Memorial Middle School.
Hi, I'm Travis Sieber. I'm counselor at Washington High School.
And today we're talking about social media and the impact of social media on our kids, our students within the school. And so we'll just start out here right away with social media. What things do you see as social media having an impact on our kids, and what effect does that have on our students?
I think it impacts our kids both socially and academically, and I know we're going to get into this today, but it impacts them in a lot of different areas. And as a parent myself, as an administrator in a school, I certainly have seen both ends of that, and I've learned, I've failed, and I think we have some good advice for families moving forward on what they can do to proactively keep our kids safe.
Yeah, and I like to think of social media, it's here to stay. It's a new phenomenon, and many of us as parents have lived in a world where there was not social media. And so we parent a little differently because this is a new platform where sometimes our sons and daughters, their worst day could be broadcast to many people. So as a parent, we're constantly working to navigate those, but there's also a lot of benefits to connecting. I mean, never has our groups of kids ever been more connected with each other. So there's definitely a lot of positives, but some things that we need to kind of help navigate because there could be some negative aspects as well.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more today about some of those negative things. Obviously, there are some good things, but we'll talk a little more on the negative that parents should be aware of. Mr. Siegfried, do you see some things that social media impacts kids in a negative way academically?
Absolutely. And I can give you an instance. I would say on average, we are dealing with social media in schools daily. Whether I'm talking to a counselor about it, a parent about it, or a student about an incident that may have happened, there's incidences that consistently come into the school. Mr. Sieber mentioned, just as we were warming up here, talking about sleep and students that can't stay awake in class and the academic impacts of that. And we see students with TikTok challenges and things that have impacted the school in a negative way. There's also, without proper guidance and without proper monitoring of some of the social media, it brings conflict into school, and student conflict, which certainly I have dealt with a number of times as well.
How about socially? Are there some of the things that social media will impact a kid socially, that mental well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, we see it sometimes with a post, and the number of likes that students will get with a post has a direct correlation with self-esteem. We see that more in female students and not feeling good about themselves because of what their presence is on a digital platform like Instagram or some of the other more popular ones are TikTok and Snapchat. And as we said, there's also an addictive nature to this, so that's where parents come in to help monitor that, because it's much like a relationship. To have a healthy relationship with your phone, you got to set boundaries with it. You have to have an understanding of how addictive this could be. And on that topic of sleep, I'll talk with students that maybe are getting to bed at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes later than that, and it's because that push notification constantly is going off on their phone. So that addictive side to saying, I wonder who commented on my post, or I wonder who this message is from, there's really no off button with that. So there's some subtle things you can do with your phone just to eliminate that, so you can be a better version of yourself when you do come to school.
What advice would you give to parents? Because we hopefully produce this so the parents will be able to watch it and get some information and be able to have some resources to go back. But what advice would you give to parents as far as social media?
Generally speaking, first of all, I think as a parent myself, and I've been taught along the way and I've made mistakes, but as a parent myself, we model appropriate behavior. And so I think it starts there. And so we do have to model, when is the appropriate time to be on your phone? How do we have good social interaction with kids? How to make eye contact with someone and have a meaningful conversation in the appropriate times to be on that social media. And so that has to be taught and monitored and supervised with students. And so there is a continuous piece to this where it's not just, well, I talked to him once, it's having those open discussions and open dialogue with your kids about what's appropriate, what's happening on social media, and how did you respond to that? And then again, obviously your own filter, like what's okay, and what's appropriate for you when you're on social media. So we're always teaching, and the students are always watching. So having those open discussions, those don't end. As your kid gets older and they have more access, that's something that's going to be a continuous process along the way. I think those are all good areas to start in. And then Mr. Sieber was talking about the social media piece too. We had our kids put their phone in my room when they were younger. And so that was what was appropriate for me. In my house, you get to decide as a parent what's appropriate for you, but sometimes taking that draw or that addictive nature of it away is sometimes an appropriate move.
Very good. Could there be school discipline that comes into play with social media and the aspect of that?
Yes, and this is the part that comes into the school, and oftentimes kids aren't emotionally ready to handle the unsupervised nature of social media, and so they say or do things that they might not otherwise do, and that has a tendency to come into the school in the form of a threat or bullying, cyberbullying, harassment of some sort where you're calling or you're posting things that are negatively impacting somebody else. And ultimately, we see it in school, in all schools, where a kid doesn't want to come to school because of how this social media has made them feel. And that's not right. And that's when we get involved, and we want every kid to feel welcomed and excited to come to school. And unfortunately, social media does create some disruptions in the school day. It does create some discipline that we have had to deal with on our end.
Do you see some of those same things as far as other disruptions that it'll cause for kids, especially in the counseling office area?
Yeah, and I kind of go back to the beginning of the school day. There might have been a negative exchange on social media or on a platform where sides of or on each side of the conflict had some type of an issue the night before or the weekend before, and we'll get a phone call from a parent saying, I don't know why, but my kid does not want to come to school today. So we have to kind of walk through that piece. We've also noticed at Washington, you're allowed to have your phone at lunch. And sometimes we'll see some behaviors that stem from phone usage at lunch when students are able to look at their messaging, and conflict can arise from that as well. So we do see it. We're trying to teach the appropriate measures to walk away from conflict that you do see on a social media platform.
Yeah. In closing here, any other thoughts for parents or things that you could tell the parents specific to social media?
What we were talking about earlier, when we are parents and we're taking our teenagers through kind of the next stages and phases of life, Josh had mentioned how we modeled behavior as adults. Think of when we're having that conversation about learning how to drive a car. We're going to model what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and I think the same thing can be taken with the use of the phone. Is it a privilege in your home? And having that privilege, putting different app limits because of what we can consume time-wise, and watching your son or daughter, making sure your time on your phone is not at that addictive stage, because that's where it can be very destructive.
Yeah, and I'll follow up to that too. I love the driving reference, and again, I'm at a stage where my daughter just got her car last year, and she loves her car. But we think about the number of things that happen up to that point. We coach them on how to drive, and we answer the questions that they have relating to why did you do that? Why did that person do that? They take a driver's education class maybe, or that we spend hours driving with kids. And again, in hopes that we've prepared them to eliminate the dangers that exist with driving a vehicle. There's dangers with social media. And we, as parents, one thing that I've learned along the way is we have to do the same thing with social media. We have to teach, and we have to coach, and we have to follow up, have open discussions with our kids, talk about incidents that might happen and how it impacted somebody else, so that we don't replicate those behaviors potentially. And those are all part of our processes, and we have to continuously bring those up. And it's work at times, but ultimately parents need to know that they have that right to check your kid's phone. You have the right to keep them safe, because we all love our kids, and we love your kids in schools. We don't want those things to come over into the school, and anything we can do to partner with those parents where they're doing the monitoring and supervising at home, and we are assisting in any way that we can at school. We want to be a part of that process, because it impacts our kids in school, and it matters.
I remember even when my daughter, when we got her first phone and social media was just coming into more of an existence then, people won't relate to Facebook probably much or as much anymore, especially if you're a kid. But we made a contract, and it was that I had the password at all times. I could go look at it at all times. I could check on any of those things, and I think that makes a world of difference, and we want to make sure that parents know that they're empowered to be able to do that. So, well, we thank you again for joining us with the Family Forum series, and a reminder that we come the third Tuesday of every month with our partners from Avera. We bring this to you to help you as families to have some of those tough conversations to make sure your child is well to be able to earn their education. So again, we thank you and have a great evening.